This is Rock That Doesn't Roll, the story of Christian music. I'm Andrew Gill, a music journalist who grew up listening to Christian rock.
And I'm Leah Payne. I am a historian and author of God Gave Rock and Roll to You, a history of contemporary Christian music.
Today's episode is unlike any other episode we've ever put out because, for one reason only, is that everyone involved was in the same room physically when we recorded it.
That's true. Most of the times, I don't think you and I I don't think we've ever been in the same room and done an episode.
That's the only
we've
time.
been in the same room like once or twice. Boy, this is such a 21st century venture we've got going here. But yeah, so that was fun, actually. It was fun to be around human beings.
Yes. Yeah. This was our live event in January of 2025 in Chicago. And we got this old former speakeasy room in the South Loop in Chicago. And our guest was Glenn Kaiser, one of the founding leaders of Jesus People USA, a commune on the north side of Chicago, founded in the boom of the Jesus movement, of that disillusioned hippie moment that gave us all this music that we keep talking about. And because he was a founder of Jesus People, also known as Japuza, he was also a co-founder of the Cornerstone Festival. But you probably knew of him first because of his musical contributions.
Gosh, I knew who they were actually because before I started working on contemporary Christian music, I've always been interested in creative American religious movements. And Jesus People USA is one of those types of movements, a commune, like a real deal commune. When you said that, I thought, when did I first learn about them? I first learned about them as these religious innovators, trying something. And there's a book about Jesus People USA.
Called Gray Sabbath.
Gray Sabbath, yeah. That is written by a really great scholar, Sean David Young, who talks a lot about that world. So anyway, that's how I first learned about them.
Oh, then I thought maybe your dad would have had some Res Band records because he was into Jesus music.
Oh, he was into Jesus music, but he might have, and I just don't remember it. But my dad was really into Daniel Amos and Second Chapter of Acts and Keith Green, Randy Stonehill, Larry Norman. But I don't remember Res Band being in the collection, but I could have just overlooked it. So how did you first find out?
Yeah,
did you first find out through Cornerstone? Or?
No, we had Res Band tapes. Fun. For listeners who don't know, Res Band is short for Resurrection Band, which is a hard blues band that Glenn Kaiser fronted along with his wife, Wendy. They did that band for a long time. And, we're kind of on a, Led Zeppelin sounding tip, possibly. They would probably demur from that that association just because they have respect for Led Zeppelin, But
if we were doing one of those charts.
Yeah, recommended if you like. Yes, exactly.
then we might do that.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And, we don't talk about it directly with Glenn, but in the past couple of decades, there have been some unflattering headlines coming out about Jesus People USA. Similar to many religious groups, there was abuse that happened there and was, not addressed appropriately and in a timely manner. We did not get into that with Glenn. We just want to...
Glenn makes reference to it about, I think if I remember right, about 3/4 of the way through the conversation.
Yeah.
Glenn makes indirect reference to that. But yes, you're right. We don't directly talk with him about that.
Yeah. So if that is a topic that's important to you, we would encourage you. There is a documentary that somebody made who used to live at Jesus People called No Place to Call Home. You can look that up if that's aspect of the story that you want to learn more about. We're not trying to obfuscate or anything like that. Just does not lend itself well to talking about music and Cornerstone to make an adversarial sort of situation. So
yeah, and also check out Gray Sabbath by Sean David Young. So there's lots of great coverage. Glenn is one of those people whose work is so broadly influential. You're never gonna get everything in one interview. So
yeah, and I felt that while we were talking with him. He is a guy who's been preaching for a long time, and he knows how to steer the conversation. It's hard to steer the conversation when he's involved because
it was fun.
You're just kind of along for the ride a little bit. But yeah, we did give Glenn a chance to comment before publishing this episode. We reached him over email, and his comment on that was quote, "The sad reality is sins of abuse, etc. happen, and how to best respond to such regardless is a long work that has progressed for us. Over the past decade, we've established several professional safeguards to ensure the safety of children and policies to address it. All in leadership and most in the wider fellowship have completed courses regarding abuse and are mandated reporters." So that's what Glenn had to say. We wanted to be sure he had a chance to comment on it as good journalists. This is kind of a...
freewheeling is how I would describe it.
Yes. This is a freewheeling episode. So strap in and enjoy. Glenn Kaiser, to me, he's like the Robert Plant of Christian rock or something, but even more. So Glenn Kaiser founded a band called the Resurrection Band in the early 70s. You've put out more than 30 albums, not just as Res Band, but he founded a commune that is still going today. He started a festival called Cornerstone Festival with all of this with many other collaborators. I can see he's wincing at all this praise. And
a young Andrew Gill grew up going to Cornerstone Festival.
Well, I dreamed of going to Cornerstone Festival, but I lived in Florida, so it was too far to go. But I did go once. It was a great festival. We did have the Res Band tape, Silent Screams. There was a cartoon shark, and not a cartoon, but a drawing of a shark and a wolf on the cover that really seared itself into my brain. So it was very edgy.
It's probably impossible to trace the number of artists who either performed at Cornerstone or who were inspired to attend and then create something from attending that's in both mainstream and Christian music circles. So in addition to being an artist who is very influential, he also created a gathering of artists that it's pretty much impossible to measure, I think, their impact.
And a record label, and a magazine. They did all kinds of stuff out of Japuza. So let's welcome Glenn Kaiser. Give it up.
Well, I can try it like this, but I'll warn you all because for a lot of years, well, you do like 36 albums, and gosh, I must be in the thousands of concerts now. I started when I was 12, first band was 13, and I'm like going to be 72 at the end of the month. And let's just say that a lot of the high end took a hike a long time ago. So I may pop the headphones on here. Let's give it a shot.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, why don't you start by telling us how you fell in love with music and at 12, and then you fell in love with Jesus around a similar time, maybe?
Let me keep it short. I fell in love with music because I grew up in a musical family. My mom and dad, it was in their DNA. I didn't know what I'm about to say right here. I didn't know till I was 19. My mother won singing contests in Milwaukee when she was 18. My dad played straight sax, soprano sax, in a dance band. Everybody here remembers Fred McMurray from My Three Sons. They were together in high school in Beaver Dam, Wisconsin, where I was born. My dad was a jazz sax player. And long story short, My mother smoked 3 packs a day, trashed her voice. My dad ended up doing early wrestling and got his nose broken and didn't have the wind anymore, didn't get it fixed. So he couldn't, that was the end of that. I didn't know about any of that.
Wow.
I started singing. My parents were having a breakup. I didn't know it. I was the youngest of 3 kids. Fox Lake, Wisconsin, a little town, 1,181. I used to pass the sign every day coming in. And I walk out the last street light where a lady had taken her life with a rope. That house, empty. I'm walking up the hillside, pitch black. My brother and sister are out running around. My dad is somewhere else working. My mom is in Milwaukee. I started singing on the way up the hill. I was scared to death of the dark. And I'd get up to the old farmhouse, it was up on a hill, pop the door open, reach around, it had those push-button lights, I remember. Pop the thing on, shut the door, sit down and turn on this little black and white TV we had. And we had a coal stove, literally, a wood stove coal. We were too poor to have coal most of the time. And get that thing going and look out the window, But I would be singing, waiting for my brother or sister to come home, but I'd be singing on the way up the hillside. And as I thought back about this, just not that many years later, so I know I'm not making this up, I would automatically rhyme words. And so fast forward. I was a drug, sex, and booze addict. I couldn't stop, and I was ready to run up needles. The only thing I wouldn't do was shoot, and I was ready to shoot heroin. And I got to a point, it was 2 weeks before my 18th birthday. There was one little stretch of time where some sweet old gray-haired ladies probably came by and said, do you got any kids of this and such age? And vacation Bible school, right? So they're like 6 sessions, little church outside of Beaver Dam, Wisconsin. Every kid had to memorize a verse, and they had me memorize John 3:16. Fast forward, for 4 months or so, right along 4 months, God showed up in my life in Technicolor. Half the time I was ripped, acid, whatever. Half the time I was completely straight. This not flashback stuff. Oh, for example, I was really, really angry. My mother never heard me swear, and it was F this and F that every time I opened my mouth when I wasn't around her. I got really ticked. I think I lost a guitar pick in the couch cushions or something. So I started throwing stuff in the front room, tearing up the furniture and stuff, swearing my brains out. And I always had the drapes shut when I was home, cranking Zeppelin or whatever, and just shut the drapes and didn't want to see people, didn't want to be around anybody. I was, I'm mad at the world and disgusted at myself. And as I said, by this time an addict. She comes home early, walks in the house, and she sees the front room trashed, and I'm screaming, And she'd never seen me like that. And I didn't quit. And she's like, Glenn. And I'm like, she turned on the left. She didn't know what to do. She just left, drove off. I go up to the front windows, and I yell to nobody, if you ever even existed, you never cried for me. I literally said, if you even ever existed, you never cried for me. And I was so full of pride, I'm sitting there shaking and crying, and I can't stop. And I hear something within about a minute or two. It couldn't have been any longer. Now, it had been a bright day, man. I'm talking sun, blue sky, maybe one little puff of cloud. I walk up and pull the drapes, and I'm telling you, it is pouring rain on my front lawn, and the sky's black. And I thought about what I had just said. Now, either I'm lying to you, or I'm exaggerating, or I was stoned at the time, which I wasn't, or it happened. That kind of stuff happened to me so much in this chunk of time. So my godfather, my uncle, died. And I could see out our kitchen window. My mom was gone. The whole night was nuts. Thing after thing happened. We'd be here forever. I said, who are you? I know you're here. I don't get it. Boom, for God so loved the world. I hadn't thought of that verse since I was like 6. And I literally ended up on the floor. I cried about a half dozen times in my life that I can remember until that night. And I just broke down. I got up off the floor. I'm like, you get dirt on a stick and I get eternal life? You're getting ripped off. I wouldn't do this. I wouldn't make this deal with me or anybody. And I was so confronted with the reality that I guess like C.S. Lewis, he was the most unhappy man in Britain the night he realized he was a believer or something. I mean, it's just like, I call my cousin up, it's 3 a.m. Mike, it's all true. He's going, when did you drop? No, dude, I haven't done any dope for a week or more, dude. No. He said, don't go anywhere. He screams across town and runs in the house. And I say, it's all true, man. It's all true. Jesus is real. We are flipping crazy. And Jesus is real. And he says, shut up, get in bed between me and the wall and stop talking. That was the beginning.
Did you think you would have to give up playing the music you'd been playing?
No, it never even occurred to me. What occurred to me is that it was time for some new friends. Because I knew so many dope dealers. And being a musician who'd been at it for a lot of years and doing a lot of gigs all around, really all over the Midwest, but mainly Wisconsin and Milwaukee in freak, as a hippie, and freak bands and stuff. So people would show up and we'd almost get stoned. Everybody'd be getting stoned. I mean, some gigs I don't even remember because I was so high at the time. Really? Did we do that show? Yeah. No, it was really about the people and about the addictions. And there came a point where I realized that I didn't really know any believers who were actually walking with Jesus, who were doing music. So I quit. I was in like 12 bands and I think I counted up 14 bands or something over 12 years' time. I was never satisfied. Like that old Muddy Waters, can't be satisfied. And I never was. And I got to a point where I started doing folk singing a little bit, and actually on a PBS station in Milwaukee at the time. They had me come up and do some songs, and there was a little Catholic church, go up and do some stuff, But that was pretty much it. I realized that my identity could no longer, first. It could not be, I'm an artiste. I'm a musician. Now I'm still pretty esoteric.
Yeah.
I get, artists get to be eccentric, right? That's part of the gig. But no, it's just, it was not about the music. It was about these other things that I realized, where were these people when I was out of my mind? I mean, I had 3 of the worst trips. It was like hell on earth, just absolute hell on earth. And I thought for sure I'd be dead before I was 20.
So can you tell us a little bit about how the inspiration for the band and how you kind of assembled this group?
Well, it was a practical thing. Jesus People in Milwaukee, which I ended up joining, had a band called The Sheep, and they had a lot more requests than they could do. And this was in the height of the Jesus movement. This is in 71. And so one night, the key pastor up there says, we need another band. Well, there must have been 65 musicians. No exaggeration. By that time, there were probably, I'm going to say 180, 190 people who were living full-time together in intentional community there, right? And after a couple of weeks, nobody came forward. And a number of things happened. One was a guy showed up, and we were worshiping the Lord like we did. And we'd have 5 days a week, we'd have a morning worship session, news updates and stuff. And then we'd do classes and then sharing the gospel in the streets and at the campus. And I'd be busting suds. That's how I met my wife, coming up on 53 years this June. And anyway, we got to a place.
Your bandmate, Wendy.
Wendy. Right. She and I fronted Res for 28 years, right?
Yeah. Don't want to take credit away from her.
So anyway, this guy comes, and he just was visiting from another town up in Wisconsin. He walks all the way across. I mean, he couldn't have begun to hear me singing or anything. He walks across to me, and he says, I got a Gibson Blue Ridge guitar, which is, if you know Gibsons and acoustic guitars, that's one of those especially back then, upper pricey jobbers. He says, I don't really play much, and I've been praying for a couple of years if God would have me give it to somebody. And he says, I think he's pointed you out. He had no idea I was praying about the possibility of doing a band. I'd given all my equipment away to nobody preached against Christian rock to me. I never heard, and nobody said it was cool. I did a dissertation in our little Bible school up there, and there's like 380 verses, that 40 in the New Testament and the rest in the Old, that clearly contextually speak to music in the Bible. And I don't think most people have spent any time with those scriptures, or very little. Even pastors, seminary or Bible college don't. There's so lack of understanding of what the scriptures do and don't say about music. Well, I've been through all of that, right? So I'm coming out like fasting and praying and going, really? Really? Because I don't want to fall away from you. And, music was part of the drug. It was just, for me, it was another drug. And it took me into situations with people that I wasn't strong enough to resist, right? So I'm like, you got to hit me with a brick on this one. So he literally does this. He walks over and he says, here. And he had the guitar with him. He opens it up and says, I think God wants you to have this. I mean, stuff like that. Now, not everybody gets this, like, I hear all the psychoanalysis and, blah, 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 blah. All your life you wanted to be a Christian. All my life I wanted to get high, get in bed with somebody, which I did, and be drunk, right? I didn't give a rip about God or spiritual or nothing. So please, save it. I got to a place where I'm like, what is love? Where is it?
Now, I have a kind of esoteric question for you. Sorry, you said this was 1971, right? And so in 1972, Expo 72 was held in Texas. And, Campus Crusade helped put on this event.
Right.
And my mom has the vinyl that they sent anybody who asked for it for free. And it has all these bands on it that were Campus Crusade bands. And you're like, these are bands that never did anything. I've never heard of any of these. Like, maybe Leah knows that they did stuff, but it seems like a bunch of just like fake bands, right?
I believe the Maranatha House Band is on there.
There's a couple, Johnny Cash, Chris Christopherson, Larry Norman, all these
There's
people.
Southern Gospel and Black
All these
Gospel
people
artists
actually
as well.
performed, but then it's padded out with these other bands.
Oh, I see. Okay. I was like, no, they were real ones. Yeah. Okay.
It sounds almost like, Res Band's roots may have been similar. Like groups would say, we need a band. Is this the same thing, or am I casting aspersions to lump you in
I
with
knew
the
about
Campus
Explo, but
Crusade?
Explo to me was like top 40 pop music.
Yeah.
And you got to know, I came out of Zeppelin and Sabbath and early Jeff Beck group, and
my point is,
the edgier the better. I left the Beatles when the Stones showed up.
So my point is, the Res Band was like a real band, has a long discography, and
so I auditioned. I prayed, I fasted and prayed for a couple of weeks actually, off and on, and picked several people. My wife she got drafted in the band later, by the way. But I picked 3 people that I thought had aptitude, and one person that I knew had an acoustic guitar and could play a bit. I wasn't looking for the best musicians. I wanted to have a sense of where their hearts were at. And how serious are they about the Lord, and do they care about people? Or is this just, if it's just going to be a band, I've done this. I did it my whole life, right? 13 to 18, I did that. I don't need that. I don't want that. Y'all want to do that? That's up to you. That's not my gig. That's not who I am. That's not why I breathe. So I'm at this point where I'm thinking, okay, so I get to, and we did like Love Song, a couple of songs. Somebody, an old friend in Jacksonville Beach, Florida, Parson Carson, little AG church on the beach. Bob Hayes said, Res Band, come on, man. He said, he said this many times over. He says, you never heard Oh Happy Day until you heard Res Band do it. And I mean, it was just slamming. I mean, we did what we did, right? And so either
got a little heavier.
A lot heavier. So either people would run out the door screaming or go, my God, there's music I actually care about going on here. Whoa. And so this was happening constantly. And we could see it. We would talk with people afterwards, share a bit of testimony maybe. And by the way, early days, we were horrible. I mean, trust me. I mean, I was even horrible, right? I mean, I'd laid it down for a good while because I thought I needed to. But when I picked it back up, there were so many confirmations. It just was off the charts. So, we saw all these people who came to the Lord, broke open all these closed doors, knocked the walls down, knocked some plaster off some ceilings, knocked some fillings out of some people's teeth, I guess. And, it happened like it happened. For me, the whole concept was there are other Glens and Wendy's out here. And man, I know exactly what it's like. Been there, done that, in spades. So I'm going to write lyrics from that perspective.
Can I ask you to go back just a little bit and tell us, because Wendy's been so core to your work, how did you meet her? How did you two get together? Like, what
she was the
it?
head cook in Milwaukee, and my day job when I wasn't in Bible class or out in the street sharing the gospel or sometimes rehearsing, which we only did that once a week for a few hours or whatever, but was I was busting suds. I was the potato peeler, and I saw how she interacted with people. That was another thing. I said, I'm done. I'm not shopping. If you want me to marry somebody, I had no intention on marrying anybody. I didn't trust anybody, and I sure didn't trust women. My mother had committed adultery and blew our family up, And, of course, I'd been a train wreck, and all the guys I knew had been train wrecks, except for my dad. He was the only guy I ever met that was really faithful to his wife, as far as that went. And so, I'm down there. And one night after a long day, and I saw how people were grouchy, ornery, and she was gracious. She served them. She's a Southerner, and she can cook your boots, and you'll love them. I'm telling you. I didn't get this big because my wife can't cook. So she, after supper, I go across down on the lounge. A bunch of the staff were over there from the day, and I went over and said, "Sis, it was a full day, but thank you. You rocked it. It was really cool." And she said, "Oh, thank you so much. You too, brother." And I said, "And I'm praying about our relationship." And she went, "Okay." And I walked away. So she's talking to her mom, which was one of our pastors. By the way, if there happen to be any patriarchal yahoos out there, I'm an old hippie, and I'm going to be 72. I don't care what you think of me. At the end of the day, one of the pastors was my mother-in-law, Wendy's mom. Her mom had started to talk with me back and forth, and she goes, "Wendy, that young man's serious about marrying you." She said, "No." "Yeah." And within a year, yeah.
Were you married before before she was in the band with you, or?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Well, no. Let me see. We got engaged. Technically, we got engaged in March and married June 1st, and she was in the band just prior. Now, that would not have been my choice. Well, here, let me explain to you. John, her brother, who ended up playing drums in Res for years, right? I taught him to play drums. He'd never played drums in his life. Wendy sang in madrigals in school. I mean, I'm growing up here in Grace Slick and Joplin. I'm hearing the best of the best. It wasn't that she was a woman. It was she was going to be my wife. And at that point, I still wanted her to walk a step or two behind me in my young Christian life. I still had some of that in me, no doubt. But I wanted somebody who could just nail it, you know what I mean? With rock or blues rock kind of a vocal. Well, basically, I wanted a counterpart to myself, only if her. Yeah. And then we get engaged, and I'm like, this woman is such a disciple, and I'm such an idiot. People, this band needs her. They need her. I need her. We all need her. And all the leaders were going, "Hey, Glenn, come on." This droll, hyper serious young Pharisee. This not exactly what people needed to hear of some sort of a gospel witness, right? So the people in leadership were pretty smart and did a lot of praying and thinking about it all. So actually, she became part of the band prior to getting engaged. And then, by the time I'm sure it took about 3 years, I understood the meaning of partnership. And we said, "Who's going to wear the pants?" Both of us. No, we both agreed. Yeah. Because we both wanted to one-up each other. Not in the band, not musically, but just in life. And, she came with a lot of baggage. Her grandfather was a child molester and went to prison for it. And she went through that as a young kid. And her father, my father-in-law, was back and forth in a couple of different churches and 2 different denominations, and committed adultery about once a year for some 20 years running, until he walked out on my mother-in-law some years later, 74, when we were in Chicago. And sad story, he took his life years later. Nobody knew anything. The world didn't know. Nobody knew anything about all of the issues in terms of DNA and mental illness and abuse that he'd suffered. I think it was a combination of a lot of stuff. But I look back at all that and I think, having this godly mother-in-law and this incredibly sweet wife who really understood the difference between playing church and being the church, who understood the difference between, get conversion, but let's not talk about discipleship. Let's not talk about growing or maturing in things of the Spirit. That's the antithesis of where she's at. By the way, my wife will tell you she's a yellow dog Democrat. They grew up in the South. Firsthand stories. And my mother-in-law, Dawn, was the first white woman in the Head Start area in South Carolina as a pastor's wife at the time. And so I learned a whole lot besides my best buddy. I was earlier we were talking. My best friend from the 3rd grade up happened to have an afro, and I played in blues and R&B and soul bands right through up until Hendrix showed up, which is interesting. Some guy years later in an interview says, "Well, how did you get back into white rock?" And I said, "Jimi Hendrix," and he started laughing at me. Honestly, it hadn't occurred to me. I was so steeped in Otis Redding, and to this day, I channel a lot of the black women of that time when I sing and when I write songs. It's even the straight up blues and blues rock I do. I'm a juxtaposition of all this stuff.
Well, and the place we are right now recording this interview is only a few blocks from Buddy Guy's Club, a few, maybe half a mile from Chess Records Studios, a lot of history.
Well, so we're in South Africa, a little under a month, and it was about 6 months before the elections, finally. I could tell you many stories. We drug our white hosts into Soweto and Alexandria and some of the townships. They'd never been there and didn't want to go either. And our songs had been banned, res banned. And I was trying to remember tonight whether it was Awaiting a Reply, the first Res album in '78, or if it was Rainbow's End. And I believe it was Rainbow's End, which was our second album. But the song Afrikaans, yeah? And I didn't know this till years later, but I guess about a year before Gabriel wrote Biko. But it starts, I hear the gunfire, see the blood run, feel the rage. I see a black man, see a colored man in a cage, and so on. And though the records had been banned, they got smuggled in. So by the time we did this tour, about half the people would break down and weep. And the other half would start grinding their teeth. And that's kind of the way it always was with Res. Whether it was for the culture, the style of music, the intensity of the lyrics, dealing with social, political things. I still think capitalism is an absolute joke, and we're stuck.
I hear the gunfire, see the blood run, feel the rage. I see a black man, see a colored man in a cage. The sweat of miners, digging diamonds, digging graves. To feed the boss man, to feed his family, to feed his slaves.
Can I ask you a little bit about that? Because you know this. You all stand out in the landscape of, I describe Jesus people, not Jesus people USA, but Jesus people generally as hippieized Christians. You all stand out ideologically from a lot of people who would have been Jesus people. How did that happen?
Oh, I'm going to say two things, I think. One, you have a PhD. I have nothing. But from the time I was 8 or 9, I studied history. And I didn't study church history until after I came to the Lord. And for me, when you find verifiable and over again confirmed pieces, you're probably getting close to the truth. If not capital T, at least lowercase. And when you hear it from people on the left and on the right, and not just in the US, but other places, for me, I've often asked myself, I asked myself this a couple days ago, so is it bias confirmation, Glenn? Really, from day one, listening to shortwave radio and English language broadcasts, and I heard stuff from VOA, Voice of America, that I thought was wonderful, and stuff that was absolute garbage, and I knew it at the time, and I was 14, 15 years old and younger. Why do you think this way? Why do other people think other ways than I think? I wasn't raised to believe this, blah, 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 blah. A dear friend of ours, Dave Bunker, he sometimes refers to Res Band and Jesus people as, he says, they're kind of like an Amish motorcycle gang. And he's not far off on that. I've been an independent voter from the time I could vote. I've abstained once or twice. But activism was in my blood from carrying newspapers and reading them voraciously every day, studying world and church and local history. Where did you come from? Why do you believe that? How did you grow up? Why did you do that way? Blah, blah, blah. I've been a chaplain for years. I'm about to do a pilot music program at Cook County Jail on one-string diddly bows because that's really what came either in memory or some literally from the slave trade through the North Atlantic to Central and South America and North America and, of course, the U.S. South. And this issue of lament, it's the biggest category in the book of Psalms. So all of these things converge for me. So I understand that not everybody grew up in the rural sticks with what? We had 3 serious immigrations of German people. I mean, major migrations and immigrations in Wisconsin, where I grew up, in the middle of nowhere. And I saw guys that couldn't have enough children to farm. And they worked hard, and a lot of them ended up having to go on welfare and scrape up, however, to try to just survive, right? So then I end up in West Dallas, working class suburban Milwaukee. This is all before I became a Christian. Girlfriend in a black ghetto, in the core, North Avenue area. So I'm down there with her, and hearing 9mm pop at night, dealing with dope myself and small-time dealer. I go through all this stuff. So now I go into Cook County Jail and prisons all over the U.S., Alaska. Then when we're overseas, I go, Iceland, Finland, Norway. How do people get incarcerated? How do people end up in this? I'm like, they just didn't have enough to keep me. They hauled me in once or twice. I came to the Lord 2 weeks later. I bumped into the same detective and apologized to him for lying. And he says, you're going to name names? And I said, no, because what they need is a relationship to Jesus. And you already know who the big boys are. We're Mickey Mouse. We're doing a dime bag here and there. So the whole mass incarceration thing, I've been in too many prisons for too many years. I'm a volunteer chaplain. I've been at it forever. That's one of the core things I do. So I understand how poverty, how racism, how exploitation of people, I just know a lot more than I knew when I was 9, 10, 11, 12, studying the Civil War, studying slavery. Why do people, from whence come war? I memorized it in King James years ago, forgive me. From whence come wars and fightings among you? Come they not hence of your lusts at war in your members. You want to have, but you can't get it, right? Glenn's paraphrase. You can't get it. So you rob and you kill and you destroy. Hello. Here we are, right now. And from Cain and Abel straight to today. So I look back, and in my earlier studies of World War I, World War II, the Spanish-American War, all of this stuff so influenced me in thinking, okay, so put yourself in that person's shoes. Put yourself in the other person's shoes. What about them? The way we treated Native Americans, oh my goodness, colonization. So There's no end to this, right? Now, this is me talking now, so many years later. I couldn't have been half this articulate when I was in my teenage years, but I understood it. So I did the marches, Vietnam War, never did get tear gassed. Thought Daniel Berrigan was one of the coolest people on the planet Earth, and I still do. Dorothy Day, of course, Catholic workers. I mean, she put her money where her mouth was, literally, put her life on the line, and talks openly and honestly about the struggles, Where was I hearing this in the Christian music scene? Rarely, if ever. Where was I hearing it among worship leaders or worship team? Rarely, if ever, pretty much never. And then I go back in the scriptures, there's a third: lament, struggle, pain, sin, temptation, enemies. God, where are you? And a couple of them don't end on an up note. Not many, but there's some that don't end on a very positive, oh, God's going to bail me out, right? Okay, this is the real world. It's always been the real world. And some people have got to have the guts to write those sorts of lyrics. That's why I did Swamp Gas Messiahs. It's exactly why I did it. It's not a blues album. It's not a rock album. It's a protest album, singer-songwriter protest album. And I wanted to finally say, okay. And I've told people I could have written that album when I was 15 or 16.
Gonna tell you a story about a nation I love. Some ain't gonna like it or want me to shut up. From the east to the west, the land grab came. We sent them packing, plenty to an early grave. History ain't a lie. When your face was red, the white man decided you were better off dead. Might makes right, y'all. Manifest destiny. Expand that empire, justice free.
Now, not everybody has gone through all of this sort of stuff. So the two things I want to say is, not everybody's had this sort of experience and tried to befriend people. I mean, I've got friends that are so conservative, they're almost flaming liberal. And I've got friends that are so liberal, they're almost conservatives. I mean, it's nuts, And they're like, what are you doing hanging around with them? Last time I checked, Jesus loves them.
Rock that doesn't roll. Doesn't roll.
Let's get some basic facts down, though, for our audience who
Let's
might
go.
not understand everything that goes into Jesus People USA.
Yeah.
So it's a commune, yes. And it started in 1972 when you...
It was an outreach. There were 3 outreach teams from the Jesus People in Milwaukee. One went to the Southwest and eventually over to Europe. Southern Europe, Italy, and so on, and South America. Another team went to Northern Europe. We were traveling around the U.S., so USA traveling team. And the Jesus People in Milwaukee, incredibly good man, was left in charge. He ended up with cancer. And when he passed away, it was a very short time, like 9 months down the road. There was no home base anymore. The idea was we were going to go back and forth. And we went all the way through the South, worked with everybody and their uncle, concerts in beaches, parking lots. It's a long story. Thought we were going to end up being based in Florida after everything in Milwaukee caved in. Got called to come back up. It was Christmas time, visiting family. A lot of us were Northerners. And the Southerners hung around down south, came up and joined us. We had a friend with a huge house in Milwaukee. People heard, and various churches went, come, play. Res Band, come do a show, share your testimonies, what the Lord's done in your life, and blah, blah, blah. So all over, the UP and of Michigan, all the way around Lake Michigan, and back to Chicago. And the story is that the bus broke down. Well, these buses were these old gas-powered school buses. They broke down all the time. So, whatever. Which one do you mean? We had 6 of them, right? They all broke down. So, but they did, yeah. So we ended up working with the Full Gospel Businessmen here in Chicago. And the president was a really kind man, didn't have a whole lot of discernment, but was very kind. Maybe that's the reason he let us in. The building had been, check this out, a wrestling arena.
Nice.
Wow.
He said, if you'll clean out downstairs, you can make little, areas, and we were an intentional community. By that time, we probably had 65, 70 people. Okay, so we built little rooms and dorms for the guys and dorms for the girls. And man, some of the weirdest preaching I ever heard in my life, when different guests would come in, and he wouldn't have a regular pastor. He just wouldn't do it. And things got crazier and crazier. So eventually we prayed like crazy, and we were able to get a house, like a pretty large 3-story, and it went on from there. So we've been in Uptown now, and actually residents in Chicago since 70, I'm going to say Marchish of 72. It's been home.
Wow.
And so everyone who lives there, how do you become someone who lives at Jafusa? How do you join? Or
It's such a long story.
Or the basics,
Let me say this. When my father, before we left Faith Tab, that was Henry Carlson, the place there, before we got into any of our own buildings, it was 74, early 74. So my father-in-law goes out the door, and me and another guy get tagged by the other leaders and a bunch of pastors that had come to teach off and on in our in-house Bible school. And we always had a large, wide range from various backgrounds in the larger church to come and minister to us, because we knew we were pretty ignorant about a whole lot of stuff. And then some of us started to speak and teach more and this and that. Well, from 74 on, I got tagged and another guy, and it wasn't even 2 weeks, I don't think. We looked at each other and went, this is crazy. We need a plurality. We don't need a senior pastor. We're not up to it. And so we tagged, it just happened to be my mother-in-law, who had been, pastoring really for day one, and several other people that were already deacons or deaconesses in the community. So from that time on, it was a group of leaders. And we were probably referred to as a modified Presbyterian approach. Probably the best way to explain it. And so from that time on, now, you might find this interesting. About 2 years ago now, we started exploring other forms of church government and governments outside the church as such, the body of Christ, capital C church, Sociocracy. I won't go into it all, but if you look up sociocracy, most Christians in churches would think of it as committees. It's quite different. It's circles. It's the most, everything that you can imagine in a small town, if most of them, not all, but if most of them were professing followers of Jesus, right? From spiritual and theological to sociological to electricians, plumbers, carpenters, cooks, go down the list. Who's going to clean the house? Like this past weekend, I was washing dishes from 7 to 1 in our main dishwashing room for the house. We have about 150 adults, probably 45, 50 kids. The top 3 floors, separate ministry, it's part of us, what we do. It's 90 to 100 low-income seniors. Aww. A few blocks away, the Cornerstone Community Outreach, it's pretty much the largest homeless shelter on the north side. It goes on, everybody's coffee. We have a skateboard shop, a pro skateboard shop, our own record label, blah, 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 blah. And we're supported by a company that we started many years ago called Lakefront Roofing Supply, roofing and siding, actually. And living in the community, if you can imagine everybody in your local church, if you happen to belong to one, move in on this huge building, and you cook together. Now you have a different, there's different, you play together, you worship together, you eat together, you have different jobs, you socialize or you don't, or you want to kill each other, right? The miracle, and Wendy, my wife, said it years ago, she said, many are called, but few can stand it. And we've never preached community. If anybody could have, it would have been me. And I've never done it because I don't see the scriptures screaming, this is how intentional community, everybody, no. But there's this sense of call to the inner city and beyond. There's this sense of mission. And there's this willingness to give and take and flow. I've been reading, again, I think I told you, Life Together, Bonhoeffer. I've been through that one, I don't know how many times. And a friend of mine critiqued it a couple days ago. He said, there's only one problem there, Glenn. It was more theoretical for him because he had to move all the time. We're in the same place with the same people, 365, 24/7, for however many years or months we are part of the community, right?
I'd
So
say
these circles...
50 plus now.
Well, for me, it's been a while, right? It's 52, 53 years. So these circles overlap in sociocracy. And it's by consensus, which is what we've always done. But now everybody who wants to have a voice is allowed to give it a shot. Everybody, anybody. So, it's how the decisions are made. That's how. It's really complex, and it would really depend on specifically what area you're talking about for me to even answer. And it's so new to me still. Sometimes I have to look at the list. Who do you go to for that? Oh, and I'm an ordained pastor. I've been most of my life. So what? I mean, whatever.
It's such a rare thing. I'm glad that we got a full explanation.
Well, I want to know about creating something like Cornerstone out of a community like Japuza. How did that come about?
Res Band toured the world, and we saw the goods and the horrifics in Christian and mainstream festivals. To this day, I do bikers gigs all over, so I'm sometimes at Sturgis and Daytona and whatever. So we've seen, there are good ways and crazy ways to actually manage and do festivals. And at one point, John was on the pastoral team with myself and 7 others at the time. One day we're in the meeting and he goes, I've been really thinking we should start praying about whether we should do a festival in the Midwest. We said, well, there's one up in Madison, and everybody kind of looked sideways because it's mega fundamentalist. They would have dropped dead before they would have had somebody like Res Band play, just loud, nasty music. They're all commies, whatever. Well, actually, we are technically, but that's another story. Intentional community. I'm not a Marxist. But the punchline here is that we all looked at each other. And somebody in that very first meeting said, how much are we going to lose the first year? And he said, about 40 grand. And we thought about it, and we prayed about it. And a couple of weeks later, we said, okay, let's put our necks on the block. Because so many young people were falling through the cracks. So many people would go to these very, much more conservative, up with people. I don't know. It just... Dude, bleed with me in the street. Talk to me. How did that person get there in that tent city? How did they end up behind bars? Do you have any clue what these people are going through? Do you even care? Have you ever stopped to ask the question? And so there was such of a gap. And of course, so between the practicality of we knew how we'd want to be treated as a band, and sometimes very much were, in festivals wherever we played around the world, and the way sometimes we got treated, and other people way worse than us. Because, when you're a big shot and you're selling more units, then you're more important. Like, forget leaving the 99 and going after the 1. Forget the, hey, 99 or I ain't going to show up. The whole idea of mathematics in the West is nuts. So right back to capitalism. So I'll go back to what we were saying. So we get to the point where we go, okay, can we sustain the losses? Because the people that are going to come here are not going to be the moneyed youth groups from the big churches. It's not going to happen. Because we're going to have bands that we invite to a party, to our party. These are the bands we want to hear. So we stretched out from day one. We also invited like Caesar Molabatsi from South Africa. You want somebody to talk about what's going on in apartheid, and since let's have a black brother who's grown up in Soweto, who was a hardcore communist, who did come to Jesus, who understands the insanity of the power and the control factor of white people and so forth, and talk to us. And we always told all of our teachers, whoever they were, be prepared to sit in the grass after you speak in the tent for another 45 minutes to an hour, because somebody with a 6-foot mohawk is going to want to sit down and ask you questions. And you're going to meet some people who are done. They're preachers' kids who are so far from Jesus. To them, the church is a joke and a waste. Are you really willing to go for it? Then come on. And we made fast friends with some people. It was really interesting. Well, and the bands. We had everything from chamber orchestras. One guy, I'll never forget, he had an album called Klezmer Nut House. He was a Messianic Jew, and these guys did klezmer music to die. I was just like, whoa!
Wait, how did this person get an invitation?
Well, that was just common.
Did people send in demos, or how did you find, what was it, klezmer what?
Because Lakefront Roofing Supply could bail us out at the end of the year.
Okay.
We made money at Cornerstone. Out of 28 years, we made money 3 times. As far as I know. As far as I know, we made money 3 times, and not a lot. And when we really made the most was right before 9/11. That summer was off the charts. We never saw that many. We'd see sometimes, 24,000 for 7, 8, 9 days in a row.
It's the one time I went,
It was Andrew Gill. That's why you made the money, I think. He's the golden ticket.
But here came.
I didn't bring any money though.
But you brought yourself. It was your presence.
I was
Yes.
so poor.
Yes.
To my understanding, a few grand, and that was about it. But that last year, I don't know how much, but it was substantially more because it was such a huge crowd. And everything was just, it was so amazing to us. And we were so thankful. Okay, so we sink it into the infrastructure. And next year, people were afraid. People didn't want to come. Several of the little festivals, we were in a festival association at that time with people, really good people, seriously good people throughout the U.S. who were doing Christian festivals, not just hack stuff, but really good people. And a lot of them were done. That was it. It was over. And for Cornerstone, we hung in for about 5 more years. We couldn't begin to cover all the debts. And it came down to economics for us too. So we had a 28-year run, and there are people up online that are still going on about it, lamenting and commiserating all the time in Facebook. You probably, or maybe you're part of it. So
He totally is.
because you could come there and see the goths do the hokey pokey at midnight outside the asylum tent.
Yeah.
You could see the local kids going, "What is this?" And you had the fine arts tent. You had all of these things going on that we were able to curate. And so whether it was main stage or generator stages, you could be a kid, you got a band, you can afford a generator and some gas, we'll give you a little spot over here, crank it up.
Yeah, whose idea was to make that okay? Because there's no festival in the world where that's okay.
Well,
to just show up at your campsite and set up your own stage? There's no
sporting events. It went on and on, but all I'm going to say. Look. All I'm going to say is.
I mean, that's what made Cornerstone great. A
lot of the churches did begin to bring their youth groups. My wife, by the way, for years, did a seminar on sexuality, which became a rite of passage when people were about 16. Their parents or their youth group people would. I did one on. I did a music seminar for many years, but I also ended up doing one because I realized more and more of the attrition rate among leaders, whether it was in a more traditional church or an underground church, a punk church, a rave church, a biker church, whatever. So all of the stuff that comes down when you're in a position of leadership, what your spouse and your kids go through. So I wanted to give them a safe place. And we'd put a couple of mics up, and I'd give them a few paragraphs on a page, and on their chairs, they'd come in. I'd say, "Okay, I'm going to be able to say time out if I think you're pushing. I don't want names. I don't care what church it is. Talk about the issues. Let's talk. Let's network. Let's get to meet. There's somebody out here who's in the same town as you, and you don't even know them. And they can be a stretcher bearer, maybe somebody that can be there for you. You can phone people, get on the internet. My heart, look." was it Augustine? The church is a whore, but she's my mother. And whether or not that was really said, and whether he really said it. But at the end of the day, recognizing the struggles and the issues, and they weren't going to be discussed at other festivals. And most churches weren't going to have a conference to talk about them. Not then, not in those days. So we just said, forget it. This is why our young people, this is why the little kids grow up and go, I'm done. I get it. I mean, what is there not to not understand? So anyway, we made our mistakes. We did some stupid things, trust me. But it was like Christmas in July. I don't think a Cornerstone went by where I didn't break down sometime and just weep. I mean, just out of like, how do we get to do this? How do we get to do this? And people walk up in Grays Lake when we started, before we had Cornerstone property out in Bushnell in western Illinois. This old hippie dude comes walking and goes, why do you do this to us every year? I said, what? He goes, I got to go back to Podunk, Michigan and put up with the, he goes, I said, dude, if you moved in with us, you might hate me in 2 weeks. You don't live together.
Yeah.
You see each other for an hour or two a week. That's the iron sharpening. It's a whole different thing when you're living full-time with a group of people.
Well, that's what John Thompson told us. That's why he started True Tunes, is because he wanted to keep that Cornerstone feeling all year long. So
it was a bit of a buzz.
Yeah.
It was a but he doesn't change. He's not going to change for any of us. He doesn't have to. We, on the other hand, who was it? Forget what preacher said. God loves you just the way you are, but he loves you too much and let you stay that way.
Right.
I was actually going to ask you about what you think lessons from Japuza and or Cornerstone. You've talked so much about being specifically embedded in a really specific place with specific people, but what kind of bigger lessons do you think you've learned?
Well, there's so many artists in the community. There are so many stories, and they're all very different. There are so many races and ethnicities. There's so much baggage. Everybody comes in with baggage. We're one of the only communities that I know, intentional Christian communities, who are out front about that and sit down and explain, this is who we are, here's some basic house rules, blah, 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 blah. Here's who you need to talk to, here's the list. Glenn doesn't even have it, I ought to carry it around with me. I mean, whatever. And so, and we give it a shot for a while. Is it a match? And some people come they visit and they never come back. Some visit off and on and off and on. Some bring their youth group every year for a month or two or whatever, or a week. We have we have sociologists and profs from universities who bring their group to check us out for a week and interview everybody, and they walk away scratching their heads of like, what the heck? It's an anthill. It's like, but there's a commitment level of a core group of us. And for me, I really can only answer for me. Man, I put my ears hard, Leah, on the rail. Andrew, I mean hard. I ask God constantly, what do you want? What's going on? I'm here. I'm listening, And if I don't get any other clarification or direction, here's where I am. I've never gotten anything close to a confirmation that I need to move. And I got a bunch of requests from different people to do different things. But deep sense that I'm exactly, when I run, I feel God's pleasure, Eric Little said, and I'm where he wants me to be. And let's be honest, how many musicians do you know who've never had to worry about their wife and kids eating? This is not lost on me. How many musicians do you know whose church from day one, when I walked in, I did a concert for a Queen that was on Rainbow's End, the second Rez album. I come into your palace rich in tapestries of love and warmth and glory. I mean, I'm talking about sex. And I'm not just, right? I walk in, I share the lyric with our leaders, and they all look at it and go, yeah, great. I'm like, no issues? Why would we have an issue with that? Do the song.
Come into your palace, rich in tapestries of love and warmth and glory. You've yielded all for me. And as we melt together within the melody, I offer thee a concert.
What musicians can walk across the street and have two of the finest engineers and co-producers and have always had them? Mm-hmm. From our second album contract, we held hard to, if you don't know this music and you're not interacting with people that love it in the street, we don't want your production input. So for me, you know what I'm saying? For day one, it was nothing but affirmation and encouragement. Not many people have that. You can walk across the street and record an album and not have to explain yourself to 15 people and not have to always think about the bottom line. It's always about money. Somehow by grace, like Front Roofing Supply, somewhat donations, not tons, but somewhat. And, you know, to this day, people are a little freaked out when they ask me to come do a show because I don't charge what most people would. I just don't do it. I don't have to. And that doesn't come to me anyway. I don't keep that money. So it's just, my wife and I have lived in one room, about 1/6 the size of this room, for our whole life. She doesn't need any more and I don't, and we don't care. So there's this sense of call and this sense of, like Sundays, I don't hit it every Sunday. Probably won't, I didn't today. But a bunch of us go out and do a vigil and hold signs up of people that have been shot and killed by police. Now, I just texted a friend of mine in a burb here, hardcore, drummer in a Christian band, by the way, it's a hardcore band. Trust me, it's loud. And, you know, I'm sure he didn't vote like I voted. Right? Praying for you, bro. Hope you're well. I know what he deals with on the streets, you know, and he knows where I'm coming from. But we're able to connect. So I'm out on the streets with everybody else, several of us anyway, holding vigil signs with women and men who've been shot and killed by police and sometimes vigilantes, just standing out there for a couple hours and praying and asking God for forgiveness and mercy and to change the laws. I'm an activist. I've been an activist from day one. Now, not everybody in Jesus People is on the same page. And of course, who am I to strong-arm anybody, right? So people are where they are, you know, wherever they're at in their walk with the Lord or non-walk or conviction about living in intentional community or at peace about the area of work. I mean, did I ask to live with these people? Did I suss them out before they signed up and moved in? No, that's not my job. It's not what I do. So learning how to interact and give and take and flow with folks when you know full well you're on complete opposite ends of the spectrum in any number of areas. And I mean on every level. Theologically, sometimes politically. It's a serious hodgepodge. But how do you love your enemies if you never have anything to do with them? How do you bear witness of Jesus Christ to your enemies if all you want is their demise? I mean, straight up, I don't care if you're left or right. Let's get serious about Jesus and Karen.
There was a book that you wrote in 1986.
Yeah.
Music, musicians, and ministry.
Yeah.
And I've heard it referenced by other artists that your book had an influence on the way people approached Christian music throughout the 80s.
Yeah, because when Res Band showed up, there were only a few bands who did what I would consider, honest to God, rock. And I mean really rock. Sort of the metal of the day, the hard rock of the day. There were fewer who spoke to social issues. The Failure of Success, Golden Road on the Awaiting Reply, the first Res album. Like I said, Afrikaans, and the next album, Zuid-Afrikaan. Someone Sleeps Tonight. We're really dealing with a lot of issues, but the war in El Salvador. We took issue with Rios Montt in Guatemala. Cornerstone magazine, of course, you know, which we wrote about all those sorts of issues all the time. And so dealing with the extremism in the church, every part of it, any part of it, whether it's charismatic, I happen to be Pentecostal at core, and probably more so charismatic in some ways. I pray in tongues about every day and have since 71. Have I done the work? You bet I have. Have I exegeted and not just eisegeted? You better be sure of it. Does that mean we're all going to agree with each other on every jot and tittle of the law? No, not this side of heaven, of the New Jerusalem. So at the end of the day, the idea of growing was always important to me and remains important to me. And I think some of us bailed. What I want to say, John Fisher at one point in CCM magazine, he wrote about the Christian music scene. He said, we used to make history, now we're making a living. I've never let him forget it. I bring that quote up 3, 4, 5 times a year. And it's just, is it a human being in front of you or a number? Is it a constituent that you're looking to get the vote from for yourself? You know, what's the motive? Steve Taylor, what's the measure of your success? Yeah. For me, I can't disconnect. I can't disconnect all that stuff. I can't say, well, I'm an artist and I'm above and beyond all that stuff. Buy my records, thank you and good night. Come out, do the encore and leave, you know.
Yeah.
We worked with U2's North American management for about 3 months. We did a 3-month contract with them, North American management. I could tell you many stories. One was they told Wendy she had to drop the top and hike the dress. And she said, that ain't going to happen. And we all just started laughing at them. They said, the other thing is you can't go out into the audience like you do every night. They said the show was great. The songs were killer. The place is packed. Everybody, you can't go out and sit down and talk with people for an hour after the show every night. And I'm like,
Did they tell you why?
how do I say sit in the trees and watch? I mean, it's a little bit of like, whoa, wait a minute. We're hiring you. You're not hiring us. Thank you. We basically said, that's who we are. This is why we're here. This is not merely about music and entertaining people and whatever, dropping propaganda bombs and going home. I mean, that's not what it's about. So, and they were cool with it, but they had to kind of wrap their minds around it a little bit. To me, the whole rock star thing is cartoon. It's come on, I'm a Midwest. I'm the most unlikely front person. Thank God Wendy was up there. My goodness. I mean,
She's great. She's a great front woman.
Goodness. Oh my goodness.
So you and Wendy, I'm thinking of you in your 20s, creating a countercultural community, a sustainable countercultural community. Thinking about the Glens and Wendy's today, there are different challenges and different opportunities for creating something like what you've created. What advice would you give to those people today?
I think people today, and we've given this piece of advice to people that have asked, what about intentional community for us? And we've always said the same thing. And we've made it very plain. We're not talking about Jesus people in Chicago. There are a number of communities. We can give you a list. Here and overseas, different places. Do a lot of praying, if you're a believer. Do a lot of praying and find one or two or three and try to work it out with them if you can stay for a week or two and ask all the questions and talk about the tough stuff, the negative stuff, I think that might get up my nose, or what about this, or what about that. And after you've done your homework, if we happen to be on the list and you think, give it a shot, come by. You'll link up with the people that do intake, and have these conversations and suss it out. And you check us out. We'll check you stuff to read and blah, blah, blah. And once we've done this, and these days, of course, a thorough background check, we really want to know, is this the place for maybe 6 months? And then let's talk again after about 6 months. And of course, sometimes people don't last 6 months. And other times they go, man, what's not to like? I'm here. So then they make it maybe a longer commitment, whatever. But we've had people in the community, like myself and my wife, for 53, coming up on 52, 53 years, a number of folks. And then a number of folks, it's been 40 years. Now we have a family right now, been there for 31 years, met each other and married before they moved in the community. 31 years they've lived full-time with community and in leadership and doing a ton of work and service. They are just now moving moving out after that 31 years. Because for them, they had a sense, both of them, of some things that they needed to do, that they needed to do outside of and beyond what we do. And so people come and people go. And it's cool. And so, but I just think younger people have to, sometimes there's this romance. Jim Pelisseri, many years ago in Jesus People Milwaukee, this old tire store, at the Jesus Christ Powerhouse, JC Powerhouse, it was packed out full of hippies, and I heard him say it again and again. I mean, we're talking burnouts. Like, that's where I was. He'd be up there, and he would literally say, look, if I can talk you into it, somebody else can talk you out of it. You walk down the street, and somebody else will talk you out of it. You got to know, and you got to make the choices, and you got to make the decisions about what you're doing. Are you going to follow Jesus or aren't you? He calls us to a cross. Not just eternal life, not just, ice cream and nonstop hugs. There's going to be pain, and there's going to be rejection, and there's going to be some suffering involved. He said it, and it's the truth. We've experienced it, and you're going to too. So understand from day one. So for me, I've been the reverse guy. Some people don't want to send people to me because at times I don't want to literally talk them out of it, but I want them to understand. Look, I became a Christian to stop pretending. I hate you want to be an actor? Great, be one. Do that. That's fine. That's cool. I came to Jesus to quit acting. To quit with the pretense and the facade and, I want everybody to like me and kiss. Of course I do. But what are you, nuts? Look, I have so many hot sauces, peppers. Some guy just sent me a care package, 6 countries around the world. It would take the asphalt off your driveway, right? Not everybody can eat the heat that I eat. And it's wrong for me to serve you my wife's incredible chili with one of them babies in it, okay? It's not right. It's just not right. So for me, it's a little bit of saying, look, I don't want you later to come back and say, you sold me a bill of goods. This whole thing was an advert. Trust me, the early days, the old real deal hippies, that was like barf on a stick. That was like, no. And when I think I'm hearing a musician or a speaker, and I'm being sold something, and I'm not getting the heart and the guts and the love me, hate me, agree with me, disagree. That's cool. Whatever. Drop it however you want to drop it. But what you see is what you get. And if that freaks you out, so be it. I want to freak people out on that level, and I do. I hate pretense. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. Paul calls the church the pillar and ground of the truth. Lord God, help us. And so somewhere along the line, the willingness to be that honest with people is important to me. I've said enough about that for sure, but there it is. Yeah, come and see, check it out.
Let's give another round of applause for Glenn Kaiser. Yeah. Thank you so much, Glenn.
My pleasure.
Thanks so much for listening. Wish you had been there for this taping. If you were there, then thanks for being there. You can find more about Glenn Kaiser and Jesus People at jesuspeoplechicago.org. Glenn also has a bunch of random blogs and things. So if you search his name, he's got 2 N's in his name, Glenn Kaiser. You can find all kinds of stuff from him on the internet.
And you can find us on Substack and Instagram by searching Rock That Doesn't Roll. And of course, you should give us a rating and review on whatever podcast app you're using to listen right now. Rock That Doesn't Roll comes to you from Public Radio Exchange, aka PRX.
Our original score is by Jim Cooper of Infomercial USA. And thanks to Adam Yaffe for recording our live event. We could not have sounded that good without Adam's brilliant work.
I'm Leah Payne, and the show's producer and co-host is the one and only Andrew Gill.
Remember, rock all you want, but watch it if you start to roll. Thanks so much for listening to this entire episode all the way to the end. Give yourself a pat on the back. And if you enjoy the show this much, consider becoming a Patreon member at patreon.com/RTDR. Thanks so much.
From PRX.